They would be like, doesn't she have a child? Like, where is her husband? I knew it was going to be a challenge, like raising kids and working. But just because something is like hard doesn't mean you don't do it. In my city, they had this family support program. I think Japanese people don't like to use these services. They feel like, oh, I need to do everything by myself. But what I've learned is that as a parent, you need a lot of support. And if someone offers support, you should take it.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, subscribing is the best way to support us. It helps us grow and bring you new stories from life in Japan. All right, let's jump in. Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Dr. Harriet Ocharo. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
You're a researcher, or applied AI researcher here in Japan after having completed your PhD studies here as well.
Yeah.
We're talking about like industrial uses of AI and corporations in robotics, in data management, and many more fields that I probably don't even know about.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about a lot of things because aside of your work, you're also a single mom raising two boys here in Japan, which is a challenge on its own. And your journey to Japan began in Kenya, where you're from. So I want to go back there to start the conversation a little bit and kind of hear about your story. What brought you here? How did you get interested in Japan?
Actually, unlike most people, I think I didn't know much about Japan before coming to Japan. I didn't watch anime. I didn't, I couldn't say that I was into, martial arts or into like any particular aspect of the Japanese culture before coming. But what I was interested in was like in higher education. So I had done my bachelor's degree and my master's degree in Kenya. And then I wanted to travel. Mostly I just wanted to go out of my country and like go see what's out there. And initially, like most Kenyan students who speak English, I wanted to go to, either the UK or Australia or the US. But then one time I was like just talking with my mom, and she was reading like the daily newspaper, and she saw like an announcement for scholarships from the Japanese government. The Japanese Ministry of Education, MEXT, Ministry of Education, Science and Technology. And then she's like, why don't you apply for this scholarship? And so, when in Kenya, like when we think about Japan, we think like high-tech society. And I wanted to do, my PhD in AI or AI-related like subjects. And so I said, okay, Japan could be an interesting place to go, so why not? So I just applied for the scholarship, and then I got it, and then that's how I ended up in Japan.
So did you mentioned you were not too interested in the anime side of things and never really have thought about Japan, but how present is Japan culturally speaking or industrially speaking in Kenya?
Culturally speaking, I think I only knew like a few guys in my campus who are into Naruto and Bleach and all those like animes from back then. But industrially speaking, like all the cars on our roads, maybe 90% of them are Toyotas. And now still like 90% of the cars market is like ex-Japan vehicles. Most of them are used in Japan and then exported to Kenya.
Interesting.
And then electronics, like in the 80s and 90s, were all Sony, and I think there was even like some like Panasonic, and there were so many electronics, like household appliances, DVDs. All of them were like Japanese manufactured, like made in Japan. That was before like South Korea and like China, especially China came and took over with like cheaper electronics that were more, maybe they don't last as long, but they are more affordable. So Japan is really like associated with like technology and, like technological development. And so that's the image of Japan that most Kenyans have.
you wanted to go abroad. You mentioned considering the UK, the US, Australia, English-speaking countries. And then suddenly your mom reads something in the newspaper. It's like, hey, why don't you go to Japan? And what do you think about that time? Because you didn't really consider Japan much. You didn't know too much about Japan. But going for PhD studies in a country that you don't know the language of and so on can be, I don't know, scary to some and such. What goes through your mind when you start looking into that?
So actually, at that period of my life, I was on like maternity leave. I had gone to I had done my bachelor's degree, and I was just finishing my master's degree, and I was on maternity leave. And my son was about 1 year old, so I wasn't really actively looking for scholarships, but scholarships to Europe and for you to do your PhD studies in a foreign country, paying for yourself is very, very expensive. And I come from just a modest, normal background. So, I had to look for scholarships. And when I was trying to apply to scholarships in the US and the UK, they were very, very competitive, even though I had excellent academic grades. But then you have to align your application to whatever the scholarship is looking for. And then you have to have an element of luck to that, because, there are so many talented people vying for the same things. So and what happened was, when I started looking up, about Japan, I realized there's actually a very strong relationship between some universities in my country and some Japanese universities as well. So I went to a university called Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, and we had JICA, a JICA institute on our campus. So already there were some people from my undergraduate university who had come to Japan on some scholarships. And when I was doing my master's, my master's thesis supervisor actually studied in Japan as well.
Oh, okay.
So he spoke fluent Japanese, and he also encouraged me to to apply for it. So during the application process, as I was researching, I came to find out that Japan has had a long history of inviting African students to come to Japan to do their doctorate or their master's degrees, and then from there on, I realized, I could actually come to Japan, and I learned that the graduate programs are taught in English, so you don't have to learn the language to study, at graduate level in Japan.
What exactly did you end up doing your PhD research in?
So I did it in education or e-learning programs, how to make them more efficient for the user. It was applied AI in education, basically.
Okay. So you apply for that scholarship from the MEXT, and then you get it. But you mentioned that you applied during that while you were on maternity leave.
Yeah.
So that means you have a little kid as well to consider for this big move to Japan.
Yeah.
What was that like? Was there any support for you to do this? Or was this, if you want to do this, you can, but you have to figure this out yourself?
No, I think if it wasn't for my parents, I wouldn't have come for Japan. They were very supportive of me. I didn't end up marrying the partner of my child at that time. So I was a single parent staying with my parents back in Kenya. And they told me that, we'll support you in whatever decision you make. If you need to go to Japan, we can stay with your son. And then they will take care of my, their first grandchild. And I could come to Japan on my own, first of all, and establish myself, and then bring him later.
Wow.
So they were very, very supportive. And I think because they also value education, my father is a professor of economics at a university in Kenya. My mom is also a teacher. So I think, and I felt like I was doing this PhD for myself, kind of self-actualization. I'm not saying I'm self-actualized, but this is something I've always wanted to do for myself. And I think I would tell somebody, if they want to do their PhD, they should. It's really not it's not something you do for others. It's something you do for yourself. And I didn't want the fact that I have a child to stop me from pursuing my dreams. So I wanted to really I don't want to have to say, oh, I regret not doing this or not doing that. So when I applied for the scholarship and then I got it, despite not having been initially, I wasn't saying, I must get this. But then when I applied it, I didn't have any pressure on myself. But when I applied for it and I got it, I knew it was a chance that I must take.
So you took that chance to move to a country that you didn't know too much about.
Yeah.
Tell me what it was like for you when you arrived to Japan for the first time and you kind of come here from Kenya. What are your first impressions compared to what you're used to?
Yeah. So before coming, I did my research. I'm a researcher, I guess. So I sat down, I took my time, I looked up what living in Japan is like for foreigners, what studying in Japan is like, what raising kids in Japan is like. So I knew that I couldn't come to the big cities because it was very hard to find childcare or daycares in Tokyo or Osaka. And so I ended up finding out about a university called Japan Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. Mm-hmm. It's in Ishikawa Prefecture, which is a rural prefecture, about maybe 2 hours north of Osaka. And it's a specialized graduate school dealing with only 3 subject areas, 3 graduate schools, only 1,000 students, no undergrads, just masters and PhD students. And I knew one other Kenyan who had been there and she had left. So I also spoke to her. So I knew I was coming to rural Japan. And I thought, Japan is kind of developed everywhere. It's not like in my country where all the services are in the city and rural areas are underdeveloped. So I just thought I would be fine. But when I landed in Kansai.
Ah.
Yeah, and I just felt, I thought Japan was this amazing country of technology and everything. But when I first landed, everything felt very utilitarian. I think I came through Dubai, and Dubai was glitz and lights and flashy. And when I landed in Kansai, it was muted and functional. Mm-hmm. That was my first impression. But it was very efficient. I was just new. I wrote down the directions. I didn't have internet on my phone even after arriving, but I knew which stations to go. So I went to the station, to the JR guy, and I told him, okay, I'm going to Kanazawa, which is the capital of Ishikawa. Mm-hmm. And I had already booked a hotel there online. So I had my booking from booking.com printed out. And I told the guy I need to go to this station, and he showed me. He sold me the ticket, and he told me which platform to go. So I ended up in Kanazawa.
Kanazawa, Ishikawa, known for being relatively cold in winter. Lots of snow as well.
Yeah.
How does the climate compare to where you grew up?
So it was really. I arrived in autumn. It was beautiful weather. Mm-hmm. Really. It felt like my city, Nairobi, and also where I grew up, called Kisii, which is in the highlands, and it's cool during in the morning, and in the evening it's a little bit cold at night, but during the day it's nice and sunny. So that was that was my first experience in Kanazawa, and then came winter, and it was I'd never experienced such cold. I'd never seen snow before in my life. It was so beautiful, but it was so, so cold. And then the houses, you still have to be in a jacket indoors, all the time. So it was really hard to adjust that first winter.
But how was it then adjusting to university? PhD is something.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's very challenging.
Yeah.
And I know that research, the way it's done can change depending on the country, the university, also your supervisor.
Yeah.
You had done all your academic research up until that point in Kenya. What was the experience like in Japan?
So the good thing is with the a scholarship from the Japanese government. They actually allow you to do 1 year as a research student before you start your PhD or master's program. And in that 1 year, you can do like a language course. You can also like audit some classes and decide which classes you want to take. So you have like an adjustment period. So I actually took the entire 1 year. You can be a research student for, I think, maybe you can do it for 6 months, or you can just go straight. You can skip the whole period altogether. But I wanted to take the whole.
Depends how ready you feel, basically.
Yeah. So what I did, because my university JIST, the Japan Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, didn't have like a language course. So I actually did spend 6 months in Kanazawa University doing like an intensive Japanese course, like beginner's course, because I didn't know hiragana, katakana. I knew nothing. So I had to go and start from zero. From the first week, we were learning, hiragana and katakana and also kanji. It was really intensive, but like my mind was really open. I had no prejudice. It was just open to learning, the language. So I was really enjoying my time there. And then after 6 months, I moved into the mountains away from like Kanazawa City, into like the JIST is in the mountains, like a rural area, very quiet.
I have to look it up on Google where it is.
You should check it out. The nearest convenience store is like 20 minutes by driving.
Wow.
But I had done my research and I knew like what I was getting into. I had my Kenyan license and I changed it into a Japanese license. And I think I bought my first car for like maybe 5 months, 50,000 yen.
A car for 50,000 yen, wow.
Yeah.
And that still drove safely and through the snow of Ishikawa winter?
Yeah. You always like get these cars from graduating students who are leaving, to go back to their home countries. And they just want to sell it off. Like maybe the shaken is, the registration has only like a few months left. So they basically just give it to you for free. Yeah. So you can drive around. And so I studied Japanese because I knew like I wanted to bring my son with me to live with me in Japan. I didn't want, sometimes like parents have to like sacrifice and like live away from their kids, but I didn't want to be like, I wanted to live together and raise my child. So I studied Japanese knowing that I would need it like in my day-to-day life. But in the university, we were in a bubble and like the professors speak in English and like half of the population is international students who speak in English. So you didn't really need Japanese inside the university, but outside you needed it. So to answer your question, like how was the research process like and how the studies were, it was really, I think that in Japan, you have the best thing for me was that you could have you had a lot of research funds. So I think in my country, you choose a thesis supervisor, but then there's like little support for that. But in Japan, like each supervisor has their own like research lab, and they have like students, and they even have like a physical space, like an office to come to and do your research. And then you have funding for like conferences and like any research equipment that you need. So I think we have like this research funding problem in my country. But in Japan, like coming here and finding out that they have like so much funding for research. So anything you want to pursue, any conference you want to attend, any equipment you need to buy, you could actually apply for and get this research grants.
So whereas in some areas, research is seen as something where you're very much kind of by yourself and you have to constantly fight to get any sort of support and funds to do things. In Japan, there's more of a system in place, at least at your university, to make sure that the researchers kind of can collaborate, can attend the conferences they need to. And so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it was really cool. And then I had like, some set classes. I think for my country, maybe PhD students don't need to take any classes, but here there were like a few courses you had to take to get some credits. And then after that, you had, now you have like the freedom to like explore your research theme and then like present it to your supervisor, and like you keep presenting and consulting and publishing, and then hopefully you graduate in time. Yeah.
Depending on what kind of your cultural background is, everyone has a different first impression of Japanese culture.
Yeah.
They'll have some things that they find similar to their home culture and some things that are very surprising.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that were similar to kind of what you grew up with in Kenya? And on the other hand, what were things that kind of really surprised you, culturally speaking?
To be honest, I've never thought about the similarities in the cultures. I just think about the differences because they are so large. I feel like, when it comes to like, I don't know, openness, Japan is like very, very closed. Like it's the end of the spectrum. And it was really difficult for me to come to Japan and also to end up in rural Japan and find, they are already like very closed off society. I felt in that, like you could talk to somebody, today, and then tomorrow you meet them, and it's like they're a stranger again. And so before coming to Japan, I thought if I meet somebody the first time and talk with them, the next time I meet them, we'll talk a little bit deeper, and the next time we'll talk a little bit deeper, and then like in 3 months or 6 months, we become like good friends. But in Japan, every time you meet someone, it's like meeting them for the first time, and you only talk, surface level things, the weather each time. And even my lab mates, like we'd have a welcome dinner, and they would get like drunk, and they would be like so talkative. And the following day, you would say, "Oh, good morning," like they would. It's just
very
nodding.
Reserved again. Yeah.
They're reserved again. So it was really hard for me to find these two sides of a person that are so extreme, like, the Hone and Tatemae. Like they're so extreme. Of course, even in my country, people have to be pleasant on the surface. But the difference between who you really are inside and outside is not that big. If people don't like you in my country, you will know this person doesn't like me. But in Japan, it's not easy to know this. So that was really hard for me. And as well as, being outside of home for the first time for a really long time, I think it was the first time I felt what it felt like to be an outsider as well, like to just not be mainstream, I can say. I think I was used to being in the middle of things in my country, in the middle of the social group, in the middle of my friends, in the middle of my family. But now you are just like outside. And it didn't help that I think there were no other African students at the university at the time. Well, I think there were some people from Egypt and I think maybe Libya or Morocco, North Africa. And they were very, very friendly and very welcoming. But apart from those, I think there were most of the other students were like from Europe or from Asian countries, actually, like China, India, Vietnam, Thailand, and then they would form their own groups. It's very natural to just like, drift together.
Yeah.
So they would form their own, like, we have this like Vietnamese, events, and they would invite us, but they had like these groups, and then there was like no African group because I was the only Black African there at the time. So it was a hard adjustment, and that's why when I got the chance to leave rural Japan for Tokyo, I took it.
You took it.
Yeah.
One of the challenges for you at the time as well, I imagine, was being kind of far away from your son.
Yeah.
You stayed with your parents in Kenya until you kind of established yourself.
Yeah.
How did you manage that? I cannot imagine.
So I think, I was very busy settling in Kanazawa. I mean, just adjusting to the cold weather, the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but I made like very good friends with the people I joined with. Like I have a friend from Georgia, the country. She's been my friend for 11 years since we first came to Japan together. And I also made some other friends, some who've left along the way. So I think we got like really busy. But the moment I finished my language program and went to the mountains, to Geist in the mountains, I, like just down the hill, there was like this daycare that had a lot of kids from my graduate school, because being a graduate school and being being a graduate school and having like lots of international students who are older, because unlike in Japan where you do your studies until you finish and then you start working, out like in my country, people go to school, go back to work, finish school, go to work, and then go back to school if they want. Mm-hmm. Like they can take breaks in between. So you find that most of the graduate students are mature students, people with families. So we had like family housing in the university, which was great. And then there was a daycare for not just for graduate students, but also some people from the village, some kids from the village. Mm-hmm. So I went there and like I found out the procedures for applying, and then I got a visa for my child, and then I went. So I was really focused on like bringing him to Japan with me, and then so I think that's when was I think like less than a year later I went back to Kenya. So I came to Japan like in October of 2014, and then around September of 2015, so almost a year later, I went back to Kenya for like a month's holiday, and then I came back with my son.
So 1 year apart.
Yeah,
and
1 year
that
apart.
1 year basically focused on how to bring him to Japan. You do your research, you complete your PhD, and then you said the moment you had a chance to leave the mountains of Ishikawa, you took the opportunity and you went to Tokyo, where you got a job now working for a large Japanese conglomerate in kind of applied AI research, specifically for industrial use. How was that transition for you to kind of go from the countryside to the city, where maybe you mentioned being the only Black African at the university, and now in Tokyo, I imagine you may have found a community as well.
Yeah. It was really hard to find community for sure for the first few years. But later there was this a friend from Jamaica, and although it was like she's from a totally different side of the world, but she became my best friend. I felt like maybe because she has Afro roots, we could relate. And then later I met this Japanese family that was really kind to me. They became like my host family.
Oh.
Yeah, and up to this date, they are still like my host family. I visit them every year. They have been to Kenya with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about this family. How did you meet them? How did that story start?
It was, I think I met them through a mutual friend. There was a lady who was teaching English, and she was a Christian going to like a Catholic church nearby, and that's where we met. I'm not really like a Catholic either, but I sometimes would go to church with my friend just for social reasons.
For the community?
Community, yeah. So we ended up going to a barbecue, in the summer, organized by one of their friends. And then it turned out the people organizing the barbecue was this Japanese family that loves hosting international students. And then they invited us for dinner to their house, and I went and had dinner with them. But they've been friendly to like the international students in our community for a long time, I think from the 80s or something like that. So they're not like afraid of foreigners or like worried about interacting with foreigners. So they invited us to their home, and my son felt really at home there. And so the lady, we just call her Okasan. and also we also call him Otosan. He's like everybody's Okasan and Otosan. They would sometimes help me to pick up my son from daycare. Actually, when I was doing my job interview, Okasan like stayed with my kid and like dropped him at daycare and brought him like and stayed I think she stayed overnight with him because I had to come to Tokyo to do my interviews.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that family is in Ishikawa.
It's in Ishikawa, and they just like, they feel like my Japanese family now. So
that's quite generous and
they're really
kind.
amazing. Yeah.
And traveling with you all the way to Kenya as well?
Yeah. They love traveling. They've been to like many countries around the world. They also have been to like India several times because they also host some Indian students as well. And so they're just really friendly and open with everyone. And yeah.
They're very friendly and open. Yeah. I imagine that, there are probably not that many people from Kenya living in Japan.
Yeah.
And I assume that a lot of people don't know too much about Kenya either. What are some of the kind of questions you sometimes get? What are people curious about when they find out that you're from Kenya?
They usually know nothing, like zero about Kenya. They maybe they've only seen like Maasais on TV, which is a very famous Kenyan tribe, which still keeps their traditions. And then whenever you see like Kenya mentioned on the news, it's like maybe related to the Maasais and like nature and like lions and like, wildlife. But that's like a very, very small, part of not insignificant, but it's just a small part of what Kenya is. So they don't know much about like, do you go to school? Like, what is modern life like? What do you eat? So they have all this. They are very, very curious. They have all these questions about Kenya. What's the climate like? Sometimes they think that it's very hot all year round, but maybe most people are living in the highlands, and because of the highlands, it's kind of cool all year round. It's kind of like spring or autumn all year round. So they're like, oh, so without seasons, like what's that like? And you have to explain we have like rainy season and dry season. But yeah, it's interesting, I think.
You have that family in Ishikawa. They helped you to kind of move to Tokyo, basically away from there.
Yeah.
And then you got that job. And what was this transition like when you arrive in the big city where suddenly everyone's busy, nobody knows nobody, and it's kind of completely different?
Ironically, it can be lonelier now in the big city because people are just so busy. There's no time to know your neighbors. And I started to realize like, oh, actually, now I miss I miss some aspects of that life in rural Japan where the neighbors were kind and curious and kind and keeping their distance, except for like a few people that you can actually become very, very close with. But in Tokyo, everybody is like very physically close to you, but the distance between you and them is like really large. It was, I became very busy when I moved to Tokyo because when I was a university student, I basically set my own schedule. Apart from the classes I had to attend, and maybe once a week we had like a meeting to present our progress results with everybody in our lab with our professor. I basically had my own schedule, but now I came to Tokyo and I got a corporate job, and started living in the big city. And I thought, I was gonna meet people, but everybody's so busy. But what happened was like I met people. There's a community of like Kenyans, and we have a WhatsApp group of Kenyans in Japan.
Wow, cool!
It's very large, but but you can find like if you need some product or some food from Kenya, you can easily find this.
Are there a few like Kenyan restaurants as well in Tokyo?
Yeah. There are some Kenyan restaurants or like African restaurants that also make Kenyan food. And then we have like maybe 4 or 5 gatherings a year. So we have maybe we'd have like summer barbecues, like Golden Week. We will have like Kenyan, they organize a barbecue, and then when you go there, you can meet like other Kenyans as well. So it was actually, it's a networking opportunity. You can meet lots of Kenyans, but like day-to-day life is still pretty busy. So it's not really easy to meet people like on a day-to-day basis.
Because most of your day you spend researching, you're in the office.
Yeah.
What was it like for you to join this traditional Japanese company, this big conglomerate where I imagine there are many, many departments, very clear structure, and you suddenly come in there, maybe one of the first Kenyans working there too, and have to do research, which is also mostly in Japanese.
Yeah. So initially during the interviews, we were told, you don't need Japanese to work here. I mean, of course, to do your work, to do your research, to organize your thoughts, to read research papers, you don't need Japanese. But to communicate with your colleagues, with the HR, with the administration, you really need Japanese. So the initial like adjustment period was a little bit rough. I joined in 2019, but luckily I work in like the research lab. So I'm in the research department. We don't really speak to customers directly. So that means we have a little bit of leeway in how we we can present in English, our work in English, and most of my colleagues, because they're in research, they have to understand English to know what's happening like in the research world. So but little by little, like my Japanese started to improve, especially my listening skills, and I started to adjust and like get used to the company. And then COVID started like shortly after I joined. So that really changed things a lot, because now we could work from home, and that means I don't have to go to the office. So and I think we've been mostly remote since then. So it's really hard to see this kind of like power or hierarchical structures in the office. But I think even though my company is one of the most traditional Japanese companies, but it's also one of the more progressive ones.
Interesting.
For example, even before COVID started, people like who had parents, who had kids, or who were taking care of their sick parents, like nursing care or like taking care of their kids, they could work remotely, or they work from home or from satellite offices. They didn't have to go to the office. We had like lots of online meetings already. So it's also one of the companies that is aiming for like 100% paternity leave. Like all the men in my company are encouraged like to take the paternity leave as well. So it's one of the more progressive companies. I sound like I'm in HR, but I'm not. Yeah.
What were some of the challenges for you aside from the language to kind of join this company where a lot of things are in place? I imagine there may be other foreigners working there too, but perhaps not that many.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you need to showcase something extra to kind of find your place as part of the research team, or was it actually very welcoming from the beginning and everyone wanted you for your experience and your knowledge to be there?
So I think even though we were recruited, like there were many foreigners were recruited, they didn't really know what to do with us, and they just treated us the same as all the other Japanese graduates. So they didn't care about your background or experience, and they wanted us to just do research and make slides and make presentations exactly as our Japanese colleagues. So we were kind of treated the same, which is both good and bad. I mean, I can see both sides, because maybe they want to treat everybody the same, everybody equal, everybody doing the same thing. But on the other hand, they ignored like our background, our experiences, and the advantages that we could bring into the company. So I think because of it's still like very traditional, it's very hard to like quick decision making or like independent action. They're not encouraged. You're encouraged to first discuss discussed a lot within the team before you can make a decision on to move forward. So things feel like they're moving at a glacial pace, which is really hard when you work for like, when in a field like AI where things are moving really fast. So I had to like adjust and find my pace while trying to do some independent research on the side. But at the same time, you have to move with the team and contribute to where your effort is required. So I think, and then you have like ups and downs depending on the projects that you work on. So some projects you have like really good results. Some projects the results are not so good. So I think the important thing is just like to just keep going. Yeah.
How different is this kind of applied research in the industry compared to the more academic research you were doing before?
So I think academic research, curiosity is encouraged, and you can take your time and dig deep, like really dig deep and find something novel, something new, something exciting for you. But in the industry research, applied industry research, so I think there would be like a pure research that is closer to academic research, but I'm in applied research, and it's always like, how can we apply this technology to our business, to our industry, to our area? So there's always like pressure to like get results immediately, like get profitable, like usable, utilizable results. Whereas in academia, you can just do research for like curiosity's sake. But in industry, it's like, okay, we need to profit quickly off these results. We need to improve efficiency. We need to improve productivity. So, we need your results to show us this. So there's always that pressure to bring results. And I think that can really, if that's a tough balance, as a researcher to do that.
Yeah. So we talked about it a little bit. You do research, applied AI research for industrial purposes. So AI has been used as such a buzzword for everything.
Yeah.
And there are many use case scenarios that are being discussed in the media, but they're usually not the ones that you're mostly dealing with.
Yeah.
So can you describe a little bit what it is that you're actually researching, maybe without going into too much detail, but what kind of use cases do you have for AI?
So there are, I think, AI has been around for a long time, way before large language models became the buzzword, or like generative AI or ChatGPT became buzzwords. Like AI was and is still being applied like in industrial use cases. So like in robotics, in factories, like in planning the path the robot is going to take to be as efficient as possible, in like picking up packages and loading them, for deliveries, or AI is applied to like optimize schedules. Like for example, the JR train systems, like the signal controls, like making sure, like planning it so that there's as little downtime as possible, or like if an accident occurs, how is the recovery scenario gonna look like? So my company has been doing some of these things for like a really long time, and they have like a wealth of information. So it started as doing operational technology, I would say, like kind of control systems, and now has moved into like the digital space as well. So there's a lot of things you can optimize with AI. For example, you could do, like when you have machines in a factory, and they have like this scheduled maintenance like every 3 months, but sometimes the machine can break down before the 3 months are up. But if you use like some kind of predictive maintenance solution, so you've collected data for all like the last 10 years, and you can tell from the data that if this machine starts making this noise or starts giving this signal, it's time to just you don't have to wait for 3 months. You can do the maintenance way before it breaks down. So you can predict like downtime before it occurs, and then like you fix that before, you fix it way before an actual breakdown occurs and like disrupts the flow. So they don't sound very exciting. Like it's not very exciting AI because it's just statistics. and like mathematics and numbers and what, but it's not like a chatbot that's talking back to you.
It's very practical use.
It's very practical use.
Kind of the same way you described Japan when you first arrived. It's very practical.
Japan is very practical, and they've been using this for a long time, like especially in cars now, all the technology. Sometimes it can break, it steps on the brakes for you. I don't know if you've
I've had the rental car just 2 weeks ago, and the car was doing this all the time. And it was kind of very confusing because I want to be in control of the car that I'm driving. And suddenly it's braking because it's deciding automatically that, I don't know, based on the distance between our car and the car in front and the speed at which we're driving, it should slow down or something. But it's confusing. Yeah, it's a little confusing. I wish they could like have like let you turn it off when you need to, you need to park in a tight space, and the car is saying no. The car is warning you that you're in like a tight space or something like that. So there's all this kind of practical AI that's been being used, like finance products, predicting markets, predicting what factors are going to affect what. There's another example I just read on the news actually. There's somebody unfortunately like had an accident at a mountain, and in Japan?
No, I think in France.
Okay.
And then like they're lost in the mountain, so they have to like retrieve their body from the mountain, but they couldn't find, like just searching by helicopter, you're really high up, and everything is just so white, like it's just like snow, like you just can't spot someone from that high up, and with like the snow blinding you. But what they did, they used drones to take photos, and then they took the photos and analyzed them using like computer vision algorithms. This is AI, practical AI, and it could find like a red dot in like a sea of white. So they actually found the body that way. So
practical uses, sometimes even in tragic situations. You mentioned you saw that story in the news. So the news, I guess that's where most people hear stories of AI.
Yeah.
And the same names always come up: ChatGPT, Gemini, and so on. A lot of American tech companies.
That's true.
What's the situation like in Japan? Is Japan a leader in AI development, maybe in fields that we don't suspect? Or is it something where maybe Japan is lacking behind a little bit? Or do they focus exclusively on these very practical applications like you're working on?
So I think that American tech philosophy, the Silicon Valley philosophy is like move fast and break things. But I think Japan doesn't like that. Japan doesn't want to take risks. So even if Japanese researchers came up with some exciting new technology, they wouldn't just like release it on the market and see what happens, because that's what ChatGPT has done without researching the harms or without listening to the potential harms caused by ChatGPT. They just unleashed it to the world. So Japan wouldn't do that. They would try to make it safe, think of all the risks before they release this technology. But so that's the two different philosophies. I would say that are the difference between Japanese and American approaches to like AI. On the other hand, I do feel like when it comes to like innovation, I think Japan is lagging a little bit behind when it comes to digital innovation. I think we've discussed this a lot with some of my colleagues. I think especially when we're in university, and I hope this is not like gonna offend anybody or anything like that. But my colleagues' view was that Japan takes like new technology, and then they find the most efficient and safest way to implement this technology. So, for example, like the train technology, like invented in the UK, in Britain, like a long ago. So they took like, how they, the steam engine, they studied it, they made it more efficient, and then they made it more practical and safer, and then they built it. So they will take like new technology, for example, like electronics, and then they would make like the best electronics there is. But when it comes to like So the electronic age, has come and passed. It still with us, like electronics, like, appliances, cars, industrial equipment. But now this digital innovation, this digital space, IT space, I think that America is still like a leader in that space because they're moving fast. I think the pace of technology of changes is really fast, and Japan is like struggling to catch up. But I think Japan is figuring out like the practical uses of like this technology, I think. So it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Do you have conversations sometimes being part of such a large company that is a leader in its own field, has a lot of resources and wants to remain competitive? You mentioned your research has to show return on investments and immediately applicable cases.
Yeah.
Are there conversations with colleagues, with superiors about how Japan can be more competitive, how Japan can hedge against risk while not kind of lagging behind the United States, for example, in that research field?
Yeah, all the time. Like, we are told we need to be leaders in like whatever field you decide to focus on, whatever technology you want to develop, you want to be number one in that technology. So Japan is doing that. But I think we, just as a whole, as a country, there's a challenge with talent as well, because for a long time, like, America was like this land of opportunity. It was a little bit like a meritocracy, or the illusion of meritocracy, and they had, as long as you were smart and you were like brilliant, you could make it like there in the US, or like in some countries in Europe as well. But in Japan, there's like this added layer of, even if you have talent, they will struggle to break through with the ideas because of this collective nature of doing things, or like because you have to really discuss collective decision making before you make a decision. So, and then the language barrier as well. So I think there's for example, there's a wealth of material that's only available in Japanese, not really translated. So if you want to outside researchers to come in, I think innovation is born in a time if you're just the same people doing the same thing over and over, you can't really innovate. You need like a mixture of ideas and people. So that's why the Japanese government invites students from all around the world every year and gives them scholarships. So not just the Japanese government, but governments around the world offer scholarships to like brilliant students around the world, and they encourage them to actually stay in the country, post-graduation, and just do your research and do your innovation. So I think Japan should be working towards attracting talent and not like, oh no, keep foreigners out, because that's,
You mentioned what the government is doing for this, offering the scholarships. Are companies like yours also actively trying to have foreign talent join them? Is it something that they prefer to do at small scale, or is there also a plan on the corporate side of things to bring in different perspectives, to bring in a different set of experiences?
So I think actually our company in the last 5 years has really transformed, and now it has acquired companies outside of Japan, and most of the revenue, 60% of the revenue, and also the number of employees who are non-Japanese, who are abroad, is more than Japanese employees. Even though it's originally a Japanese company, when you look at the numbers of the employees, they are more foreign employees. So I think it's transforming with time as well. To stay competitive, you need to have an active policy or strategy.
Does this have an effect on your day-to-day work and your research? Do you see the change?
Unfortunately, I think inside Japan, if you're working in Japan for a Japanese company inside Japan, it's still very domestic. It still feels quite domestic. But I think opportunities are opening up for the future. Yeah.
I don't know if it was just before you joined the company or just after, but you had your second child.
Yeah.
So moving to another country just after getting your first child, and then moving to a new big city with a new big job, around the time that you have your second child. You like challenges. How was it like for you to suddenly balance motherhood for 2 kids and this new career in a very demanding field?
Yeah. So I moved to Tokyo in 2019. My eldest child was like 6 years old. Now he's 12, going on 13. And I think, having lived in rural Japan for like 4.5 years, there was like zero dating opportunities as a single mother in Japan who is a foreigner, who is Black. It's really hard. I don't even think being like white and blonde would have helped in rural Japan, because they were just like mostly just scared of foreigners in the first place. Not really scared, but like it's something new for them. They worry about. They don't know what it would involve, And also I didn't speak much Japanese back then, so and then you would open the app for like maybe trying to meet people, and the app says there's nobody new around you. So
middle of the mountains, nobody new around you.
There's no one around you. It's really like, it was just a whole different experience. So when I moved to Tokyo, I was like, okay, finally I'm like in the land of bottomless swiping. But unfortunately, most of the people you'll meet on the apps are, I think it's very hard to meet people in real life, or either on the apps or just in real life, just like meeting
Everyone's
somebody.
Busy.
Everybody's working, everybody's busy. So unless like you go to like a bar in Shinjuku or something, maybe you might meet somebody. But then, I had my kids, so I was really busy. But then I think one time I had a friend coming from Kenya to visit me, and we were just going around Japan, and actually I met somebody, and it was really interesting to meet this Japanese guy, because he was very confident. Sometimes, like in my uni, I would get into the lift and elevator, and the person in there would like shrink to like to the corner or something. It feels like they are scared of me. But in Tokyo, like people are more, they don't care if you're foreign or not. So they don't care as much, about what other people are thinking about them, because people don't know them. I think in rural Japan, everybody knows you. So if you go to a coffee date with somebody, they would be like, everybody would know, oh, you went for a coffee date with that black person, that Black woman. Doesn't she have a child? Like, yeah, where is her husband? So like people would ask me, where's your husband? Where is your husband the one studying? They'll be like, no, I'm a single mom. I'm the one studying. And they will be so confused. But so anyway, when I moved to Tokyo, and I was busy with work and everything, but I think the pandemic slowed things down a bit. And my friend came to visit me, and we went out one time, and I met this guy. And then, although we didn't end up like getting married, but like the timing just felt right. So this, I don't think I've ever talked about this like on a podcast or anything, but I really felt like, oh, I want to be a mom. Like, I was already a mom, but this time I felt like, oh, I'm ready for like a child. I really want a child. And I would be on the trains, and all the babies would just be looking at me, smiling at me. The timing was right. We were working from home because of the pandemic, and that felt like I don't have to be, pregnant and going to the office. And then in Japan, if you have been paying into employment insurance for 1 year, you qualify for like a 1 year maternity leave. And I think this is really a good thing in Japan. I think because in Kenya, when I had my child, I was actually working in Kenya. I worked for a consultant company called EY. And
Ernst & Young?
Yeah.
Okay.
I worked there as an IT consultant for about almost 2 years. And when I had my child, I only had 3 months of leave, and then I had to go back to work.
That's a very short time.
It's so short. So in Japan, when it was like, oh, you could take 1 year, I really felt like, yeah, I think, I can take 1 year. And then I was young at the time. I was like, not young, but I was like 32 years old, which felt like, okay, this is a very good age for me. I don't want to wait until like I'm older and it's harder for me to get a child. And so we just agreed with my partner, and I got my second child then. I didn't really think so much, like, I knew it was going to be a challenge, like raising kids and working, but just because something is like hard doesn't mean you don't do it. I think there's a lot of people I meet, maybe some Japanese people who have told me, "Taihen desu ne," and I'm like, just because it's taihen doesn't mean you don't do it. Because even like work is taihen, but people do it. But this is something I wanted, so I got my child, and
you knew it was going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
But it was maybe not so clear at that time what the challenges would be.
Yeah.
Once you had your child and maternity leave finished, what were some of the big challenges that you faced that you were like, oh, I didn't think about that, but this is difficult that you suddenly need to figure out?
So, like when they have flu, and
now is the season as well, as we are recording this in January.
Yeah, my kids had flu in November. I think the wave in Tokyo was November. And then you have to stay at home for 5 days taking care of them. But in Japan, there's, you have to take your leave days to be able to do that. And, you have 2 kids. And if you take your leave days, if they get sick 2 different weeks,
suddenly all your leave is gone.
All your leave days are gone. So that's why it's really important. That's why I think my company is one of the good ones, because in addition to your usual annual leave, we have about 24 days already. Everybody who joins, you don't have to wait for 5 years to get all the days. We also have 5 days of sick leave for your kids. If your kids get sick, you get 5 extra days to take care of that. So I think working in my company was one of the reasons that I felt comfortable, that I could be able to handle this childcare situation as well.
Is there a system in place from the city as well where you live that helps single mothers with extra daycare support or things like that?
Yeah, yes. So when I first joined my city, it's in Mitaka City in Tokyo, they had this family support program where someone can help you drop your kids at daycare, pick them up and stay with them until you come home from work, because I had to go into the office, before the pandemic. And I took advantage of that because, if you're going to the office, or if you, today I've come for the podcast and I need to, I won't be able to be back in time to pick up my child from daycare. So they can, the city has some support programs like that. They even have one for single parents, an extra program where they can actually stay longer, and then the city subsidizes the cost of that, of that service. So I have taken advantage of these programs, and I think Japanese people don't like to take advantage. They don't like to use these services because they feel I need to do everything by myself. But what I've learned is that as a parent, you need a lot of support, and if someone offers support, you should take it. Yeah.
Your first son has 2 Kenyan parents. Your second son has one Kenyan and one Japanese.
Yeah.
Both of them are now growing up in Japan.
Yeah.
That's a super interesting cultural mix.
Yeah.
How do you balance this? What kind of things do you notice as they grow up as brothers and in a foreign, well, not even a foreign country anymore? This is their home.
Yeah. So actually, my eldest is very Japanese, very in his mannerisms. He's always trying to tell the young one, no, you don't talk on the train, sit when you're eating, and all those small rules. But what I try to do is just keep like make the home like a safe space where they can like just be themselves, because I feel like the outside tries to mold them into this perfect, image of like, children in Japan. And then I'm trying to like keep English alive at home, because they'll speak Japanese at school. So we speak in English at home, although I don't know if I have the space to teach them Swahili as well, or like my ethnic language called Kisi. So it's tough, but I think, and now strangely, I think we watch a lot of American TV. So like my kids are being influenced by like Disney animations, or maybe we've watched Toy Story like 5 times, or so yeah.
How do you manage this personally? How do you find a balance?
I think I just don't have like personal time, really. So after the kids go to bed, I will stay up an extra hour to watch like maybe some TV, drink one glass of wine, just enjoy my own company. And then like working from home is really important for me, because it saves me like 2 hours every day, at least 2 hours of commuting every day. So in that commuting time, I can like go for a walk or go for a run, just try to stay mentally sane. And I have to realize that I feel like I'm not giving it 100% in my job or 100% as a parent. So I feel like if I didn't have kids, my work would be like excellent. I feel like I'm not able to put in like 110% or something like that, even though I think in the last year, actually, if you go to my company's website, I think we have there's this article or interview in which I've been interviewed for a project that we did. And we won this like company-wide prize with my teammates. Thank you. Yeah. And I was just so surprised that actually even the little that you put in, even if you're putting in your 70%, but this is the best you can do and you're trying it, like something will come of it. So, yeah.
You came to Japan for a scholarship, a country that you did not too much about at the time. You went to rural Japan for 4.5 years to do some research. Now you're working at a corporation in Tokyo. What made you stay? Why not take an opportunity and after maybe your degree, go to Australia or somewhere else? What made you want to stay in Japan?
Yeah, to be honest, actually, I thought about that. So when most of my friends who, I think later there were like a couple of people from Ghana and Nigeria who joined my university. But they were like men and they didn't come with their families, or they were single, so they were not in the same situation as me as well. So they left for Canada. I think Canada was like very welcoming at the time, and they had this immigration program. So they left for Canada or for the US. And for me, I got a job offer before graduation.
I see.
Yeah, to come to Tokyo. So my university is like very specialized, and these companies looking for like these specializations would come for seminars. So I got a job even before I graduated, and I was like, let me go to Tokyo and experience life there, experience what working in a Japanese company is like. And, because I didn't have that experience. So I wanted to move to Tokyo first of all. So that's why after graduation, I was like, okay, let me move to Tokyo. Started working for this company. Then COVID started, and then I had a child. So I felt like, it's too much instability to move around. My kids are actually happy here. So that's why I'm still here now.
You came to Japan with this image of it being kind of industrially advanced. You're now working at the top of this industrial advancement over a decade in Japan. Where does that leave you today? What are the things that you would like to experience now here that you kind of hope you get to do in the next few years?
So initially, I was surprised by how much everything was cash-based. Even in my country, in Kenya, we don't use cash as much. We had like these mobile payments, but it's changing now. now you can go to some places and it's cashless in Japan. So I think we could like renew our licenses online in Kenya, and there were many digital services as well. So I felt like Japan is both analog and digital at the same time. Some things are still being done like the old way. On the other hand, some of their like technologies, like really like their trains, everything, it's like world class, So it's a contradiction, I think. It's really interesting how some things can be like really digital and some things are like so analog still.
So that leaves you with a lot of things to still explore and discover and enjoy.
Yeah.
Dr. Harriet Ocharo, we talked about so many things. It was super interesting to kind of see how you overcame all your challenges to be here today. Is there anything in particular that we didn't talk about that you would have still liked to bring up today?
No, I can't really think of anything,
there will probably be something the moment we stop recording, as it is usually the case.
Yeah, for sure.
But it was a real pleasure having you here and
same.
listening to your many insights and your story. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow. What a story.
Thank you. Sorry,
Thank you for sticking with us all the way till the end. We really appreciate it. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the podcast. It helps us improve the show and bring you more in-depth conversations from Japan. Take care and see you next time.